Hey guys, today we're going to discuss representation and the requirements that have come from the NAR settlement, along with the risks and legalities of dual agency. So, to begin with, we'll start with representation. We're going to cover, establishing agency. This is usually done by, just as first communications, and then of course you send out an IBS either through email or provided to them in person. And then we'll also talk about the representation agreement that's now required and what to do in certain circumstances that have occurred. It's not going to cover everything, but more or less the main topics that we're looking for. And then, of course, any questions or issues that you run into, you can always contact me directly on my cell, of which you should already have. So first, representation agreement is it's now required basically on for all realtors on all residential transactions, whether this is a lease or a sale or whether you're representing the tenant or the listing side. Either way, you need to have a representation agreement required signed by the clients. Now, the MLS has basically indicated that they're going to be the ones who police this. They haven't indicated how they're going to do this yet, but I imagine they'll reach out to some agents and ask them to provide the copy of the signed representation agreement, and it must match up to that first tour that you scheduled for that client. So just bear that in mind. They've indicated that the first offense will be a $500 fine. I don't imagine it'll stay like this, but I think it's just because the NAR settlement is, still so new. The other thing is with so it has to be done prior to the first tour, and this is on the buyer and the tenant side. Obviously, for the listing side, you guys can get this done at your listing appointment, which is fine, or even later. There's no specific timeline on it, but I do require that, and that's because there's also another requirement that all the compensation must be provided and outlined in writing to the client on the listing side. And this is already done in the listing agreement, the representation exclusive right to sell or exclusive right to lease agreement. So this document already covers that requirement. And so that's why we're mandating it. Now, on the tenant or buyer side, there are two representation forms that are made available now. There's the long form, which is, of course, what people or realtors have been using for years, and it's several pages and it has all the different sections. And then they now have a short form, which is just a single page document. It's a lot easier on the clients and probably easier for them to just sign it and digest it and have less questions. So you are free to use either of those in the in your with your clients, and both work just fine. Both will achieve the requirements that have come from the NAR settlement. So the long form, though, does have more in it. Obviously, it's several more pages, but it also has a whole section for construction and bonuses and additional compensation. And so it already has the allocation there. So if you're going to be looking at some new construction homes along with some pre owned homes, you'll want to use the long form just because it has that in it. Now, if you have a client that may be a little shaky about signing the long form, it's fine to use the short form. As a matter of fact, there's even a place on the short form to indicate that all you're doing is just showings and this isn't the full service. So you can do that. If you end up wanting to later on, turn it into full service, you can use an amendment or even do the long form at that time. But to begin with, if you just wanted to use a short form just to get them, started with the service, that's fine. And it has allocation for that. Now, the main thing about using these forms is where you can get caught up is a the a new rule that came from this whole settlement is that we are not allowed to collect more of a commission than what's agreed to in the buyer's representation agreement. So if you put, say, 2% in the buyer's rep agreement and the seller is paying 3% and you don't have anything else signed, then legally you're not allowed to collect more than that 2% and you can get into some trouble. So um, I will talk about what you can do on the next slide. So, what if there's a bonus or what if there's a different commission? And there's a couple of options here. The main one, the easiest one, is whether you've signed a short form or a long form and you haven't allocated for a bonus or a different commission that's more than what's in there, you can use what's called the amendment, the representation amendment for it's TXR or TAR 1505 is the call number for it. But it actually has a place in there where one, you can turn the services from just showing to full services. You can also change the commission amounts. You can also add bonuses if there are some. So if your clients are looking for looking at a particular home that's offering more of a bonus, then just have them sign that amendment so that you can get paid that bonus. And if they've already signed the representation agreement, they should not have any problem signing an amendment allowing you to be able to collect the higher commission. Um, the other thing is, like, what if the commission is less than what's in the representation agreement? There's a lot of cloudiness that's on this. No, you do not have to force your clients to pay you the difference if the property they decided on is paying less of a commission. There's a couple of options here. First of all, I would like to say that everything in a contract is negotiable. This includes the buyer's agent commission. So you guys can certainly request that the seller pay a higher commission than what the agent indicated on the phone, whenever you talk to them earlier. If, they said, oh, my sellers are only paying 2%, that's fine. Go show the home anyways. You never know if if it's a buyer's market like it is now, then you can actually negotiate that into the contract. Say, my clients are interested, but they've agreed to 3% buyer's agent commission. They'll only be, here's the contract, but they want the seller to pay a higher commission. So again, everything's negotiable. The seller can agree or disagree. It's up to them. Now, the alternative is, say the seller says, I'm not paying a higher commission, and your buyers are just in love with the property and they want it. That's fine. One option is you can do the amendment and reduce the commission amount to the amount that's being paid, and your clients can be perfectly happy with that. Or you can just send your clients an email or give them something in writing that just says, hey, just want to let you know, even though they're only paying 2%, we will not be pursuing the additional commission that we agreed to in the representation agreement. And that's fine too. All of those are perfectly safe options that you can use to help your clients feel better about it. Now, next is dual agency. So we're going to talk about, common occurrences, when this could happen, how to handle it, and some frequently asked questions and what to do about those. Now, in the state of Texas, dual agency is illegal. You cannot represent both the buyer and the seller or both parties in a transaction. You cannot as a sales agent. Now, there is what's called an intermediary, and this is what's called where the broker oversees both sides of the transactions. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to represent both the buyer and the seller of the transaction. No. What I'm saying is our brokerage, we would have two separate agents within the brokerage represent both sides of the transactions. This is allowed with the intermediary notice being signed by all the parties. Now, a common situation where this may happen is, say you're representing, it's usually when you're representing a seller, but In this circumstance, you're representing a seller and you're hosting an open house, and maybe a customer shows up without representation, or maybe the seller procures a buyer themselves. Maybe it's a friend or an acquaintance or someone from church or something like that. These people show up, they decide they want to put in an offer, and they do not. You ask them, hey, do you have an agent? And they say no. That is one scenario. Another is when you're representing the buyer, and maybe your buyers end up finding a house that's a for sale by owner. And this seller does agree to pay a commission on this, which this does happen. You may want, anytime your clients find a house on like Zillow or Trulia or some other website or even Facebook or something, they may say, hey, can we go look at this? And your first indication is, the first thing you want to do is just to make sure you're going to get paid a commission. So you contact the seller and see, hey, you know, do you have an agent? No. If not, are you guys paying a commission? And they may be perfectly fine paying a commission to the buyer's agent side in order to get the home sold. Now, how to handle it. So first off, you know, it's only permitted for the brokerage and not the agent. Now, one, ask this other party or customer or whatever if they have an agent. If they don't, then at that point, you want to be clear. You want to disclose in writing as soon as possible to the non-represented party that you only represent your client, that you do not and cannot represent them. You can't offer any opinions or advice. Now, what we can do is recommend, getting them an agent from the brokerage. You can provide them an information about brokerage services. This does not establish representation, but encourages it actually. So just make it extra clear, about what representation is and about how you only represent your clients. And then ask them, if they would like an agent to be appointed to them. This is the most ideal situation. Now, what if this non-represented party doesn't want representation? This may happen. And as long as you disclose it in writing to all parties that you only represent your client and that they're wishing, to forego representation, then you can proceed and you can, move forward with the transaction. My recommendation and preferred, one, it's required that you need to send some type of, notice in writing. Now, the Association of Realtors has provided this. There is a representation disclosure form that you can send them that talks about this. It's not required that they sign it and provide it back. If they did, great. We have signed proof. At a minimum, though, you need to be able to show proof that you did send them this form. You do not have to get a intermediary signed if they do not want to be represented. Now, another common question is, can you still collect both sides of the commission? Now, the new representation agreements actually for the seller side actually have, the commission if another brokerage is involved, and then the commission if there is no other broker involved. And you are perfectly allowed to put in a reduced commission amount if you want to, if there's no other broker involved. That's fine. If you don't want to fill that in and you want to try to collect the full commission, that's fine too. So either way, that listing agreement actually allows for a full commission to be paid to our brokerage in the event that, no other broker is signed. Now, can you, so if we have another agent that's involved, though, where we assign another agent, you can actually pay them like a nominal fee, $400 or $500. And this would actually allow you to be able to collect the full commission with another agent involved, minus the $500 or $400, whatever you agreed to pay an agent to represent them from contract to close. So just make sure that there's a degree of separation between the agents. This can't be like a husband and wife team that, y'all are representing each party. Now, this signed representation disclosure, it is a CYA. It's designed to help protect the brokerage, your clients, and you from an unrepresented party from deciding that they're going to just sue everybody because they feel like they were treated unjustly. So again, highly recommended if you can get that involved. Now, minimizing the liability here is, probably the biggest factor that we're trying to take into account. One, don't ever offer opinions or advice to opposing party that you do not represent in a transaction. This is actually a breach of your fiduciary to your client. This can get you into some serious trouble. So just don't. If a unrepresented party is calling you, asking you questions about what they should do, your recommendation is for them to either you know, we can assign them an agent so that they can have someone that they can lean on in that circumstance, or to go and find another realtor or speak to an attorney to get advice from them, because you and your fiduciary responsibility to your client cannot answer those questions. Encourage the other party to seek representation, or allow you to find another agent within the brokerage. This is ideal. This is the best solution, because you never know what's going to happen in a transaction. Once they're under contract, there can be issues with inspection, there can be encumbrances on the title, or there could even be a shortage on the appraisal. I mean, there's so many different things that could happen that a person who's maybe only bought and sold one or two homes in their life, or none, wouldn't know the first thing to do about how to deal with it. So having an agent involved will actually protect everybody involved, help the transaction go smoother. Everyone's happier whenever we have agents on both sides. Don't ever claim that you will represent an opposing party in a transaction when you already have a client that you're representing. This is a big, big no-no, especially if you were to do something like that in writing. You would be breaking the law. And at that point, they could not only file a complaint with TREC, but they could sue you, and they can cause a lot of problems for everybody. So just don't go into those realms, okay? That's basically it. It's a real short video. Just wanted to cover some main topics about representation and dual agency, just to make sure everybody's all on the same page and doing what's right. I hope you guys have a great day.